Good morning, welcome to the Celtic Briefing with Sean Martin and I, Andy Bargh. The morning after the night before, or the afternoon before, in the Europa League, Sean, resounding victory over Ferencvaros, even if the 2-0 scoreline suggested it might have been a fairly close game. Celtic sort of cruised to the victory in the end. A couple of goals from Kyogo, Furuhashi and David Turnbull getting the job done. It was a result and I think a performance that was needed, to be honest, after the start that Celtic had made in the Europa League. Would you agree?
I think it was must win. I think we kind of referenced that even before the game. The games took place when the draw came out. I think we all earmarked that these two games against Ferencvaros were probably going to be crucial, regardless of how the other two went. And it's a very, very, very good first step.
Yeah, well, if Celtic want to be playing European football after Christmas, even third place might be good enough. It depends on what your perception is of success for Celtic in Europe this season, because they can drop into the Europa Conference League. And, a run there might be exciting, but it is hard to qualify for the Europa League knockout this season because the way that UEFA have changed the format. So a second place doesn't guarantee passage into the knockout stage of the Europa League, because whoever finishes second will play somebody that's dropped down from the Champions League, finishing in third place. So it is weighted towards the bigger and the stronger sides, I suppose, as UEFA tend to like to do. But there is now hope for Celtic that they can get something from European football after Christmas. And last night's performance showed that I think they can go on their day and probably go and hurt a few teams, because the way that Celtic were linking up at points last night was really quite impressive to watch, I would say, especially between Jota and Kyogo Furuhashi.
Mm-hmm. I think not to go too negative with it only really you would think needs a draw in Hungary to have the kind of Conference League buffer. But I don't see why they shouldn't be looking to maybe, given the way that they played against. Obviously, they lost 4 goals to Leverkusen, but the game was far closer. You done the stats report. It was a far closer game than that suggested. Celtic had their chances before Leverkusen kind of started the rout. And Betis, obviously, the game management was what was the concern, but they did have the chances there as well. So as much as I'm saying a draw in Hungary should be enough to at least have the Conference League buffer, there's no reason Celtic shouldn't be aiming to try and nick that second spot, or even, probably not the top spot, but the second spot.
Well, send in your comments if you're with us this morning. Anything you'd like to discuss from last night, anything that you feel sticks out in a positive or negative fashion. I think the first one that probably sticks out in a positive fashion is the opening goal, Sean. The pass from Jota through to Furuhashi. And to be honest, at the time of watching, I thought, I was watching it alone, and I just thought that in my head that's some pass. Didn't really appreciate it fully until I saw the replays. What stuck out for me at the time was the first touch from Furuhashi to take it in his stride on the half volley. Quite an incredible piece of technique.
I liked it all. I liked the bit right before where Jota had the composure to take an extra couple of touches and seek out Kyogo, because as I mentioned in my match ratings, Kyogo had been slogging, but without much in the way of service. Always making the runs, and that kind of goes to show the persistence pays off, because he made not the same run, but he made a run countless times earlier in the game, and that was the one that found him. And it found him because he was still on the move. Lesser players would have maybe started giving up the ghost at that point and just kind of going through the motions. He wasn't. You mentioned it. The quality of pass from Jota was second to none. It's probably the best pass we'll see all season. But directly before that as well, Celtic playing out of the Ferencvaros press, not lumping it, keeping their composure. Jota using the space that freed up to then pick the pass. And obviously the pass itself is just a moment of magic and a moment of skill, rather than anything like the system brings up, if you want to put it that way. But that's the beauty of it. It gave him the space to use that skill.
I have wondered that at times. Players like, I suppose, Jota and Furuhashi and maybe Turnbull now and again, if they have creative license in this system, when they have an idea that just pops into their head that might go against what the manager is ideologically asking of them, if they feel they can do something off their own back that will benefit the team, such as that pass, then they're allowed to go and do it.
I don't see why not. Nothing that he says to me. I know some people like to he's an ideologue, and it's got to be his way. It has got to be his way in terms of they've got to play attacking football, and he likes a certain system, but it's not like he doesn't give the players any agency to adapt. Early in the season, I about that, and they are. He basically said they're allowed to deviate from the game plan if the situation calls for it. They need to think on their feet as well, and that includes going forward as well as at the back. So I think it does actually encourage individual brilliance as much as it encourages attacking players to have the freedom to do what they do.
Sorry, Sean, I think one of us froze there for a second. I was confused if I'd lost you or not, but you're back now. I think one of the really impressive things about the goal as well, and that really, really irks me when I watch football sometimes, when strikers overcomplicate things. If they try and be too clever with their finish, maybe aim for a specific part of the goal or try and dink the keeper or such. I think that was simplicity at its best when Furuhashi finished that one off yesterday. He had a gap in the goal to aim for, a bit like Jota at the weekend, saw that the gap was there and just rolled the ball into the back of the net. Didn't try and do anything clever or be smart about it. Just finished it off the easy way to do what was the most important thing, which was put Celtic in the lead. And I think that sort of composure and that sort of streetwiseness as well is a massive part of his game.
No, I agree. I think he made the finish look easy. I suppose in a manner of speaking, for him it was, because he'd already noticed that the keeper wasn't in the optimum position and just exploited that. He has a couple of times this season tried to overcomplicate his finishing, if you want to put it that way. He's missed it. He tends to be one of those players that misses maybe one or two chances before he scores one. But last night, when it mattered, he finished it basically the first time of asking, because, as I say, before that, he'd been slogging all night without really getting the chance of the service. The header in the first half being the only thing I can think on, and that wasn't what I would say a clear-cut chance. Mistimed his jump a wee bit, but that was essentially the first proper service and chance that he'd had, and he rose to the occasion.
David Bradley is in the comments asking if Abada needs a rest. I think that probably depends on when James Forrest will return, but Mikey Johnson had an impressive few minutes from the bench last night when he came on. He looked very motivated, very direct. Do you think that he is someone that maybe could benefit from Abada being given a wee bit of time on the bench?
Potentially. I thought Mikey Johnston did look good when he came on. I thought he looked, I wrote in my match ratings, he looked like a man with something to prove, which he has. He's got plenty to prove. I mean, you wrote the article on the unfortunate timing of his latest injury pre-season. It's not even his latest injury, actually. He'll get injured again, didn't he? But he definitely looked right up for it when he came on, and it was very intense, if you want to put it that way, when near the final whistle. We obviously knew he only had a couple of minutes to make an impact, and he was adamant he was going to, and I think that impression did come across. In terms of Abada, I think he has been going through a trough. It's just, as you say, the lack of rotation options at the moment. I noticed that Kyogo actually went out wide right at the start after Giakoumakis came on. I thought he would have switched with Jota immediately and put Jota wide right and Kyogo wide left, because that's usually what would have been the case. Johnston seemed to frequent central areas just as much. He liked to drive in. So I think there is a chance. I don't know if Johnston's quite ready to start again, but I do agree with David Bradley's comment there that Abada does look like he maybe needs maybe a game not starting, maybe give him an impact role. As to who comes in, you're right, it might not be until Forrest is actually ready to come in straight from the start. The other alternative, of course, as I said, there is if Giakoumakis is going to start through the middle, then Jota on the right, Kyogo on the left, or vice versa.
Well, Giakoumakis brings us on to my next point, which I was going to ask you is, who's Celtic's penalty taker? Because McGregor's penalty yesterday, I actually thought it was not a bad strike. It was good to say. It was a good height for the keeper, but he struck it pretty well. The keeper got across well and parried it. I've seen far worse penalties end up in the back of the net. Just sometimes that's the way it goes. But with Giakoumakis scoring a fair few for Venlo last season, I think it was 9 of his goals were penalties for Venlo. There's 26 or 27 in total. So a fair few of them. I wasn't surprised to see Callum McGregor take it. He's scored a couple in the shootouts for Scotland in the last couple of years as well. But I don't know what the actual pecking order is. Do Celtic have a designated penalty taker?
Well, Juranovic took the one against Betis, so I would think if he was on the basis that he took one and scored one, it might be him. But I mean, Giakoumakis, as you said, did score a couple, so you never know. I think it would depend who's on. Last night, I think it was simply a case of the captain stepping up because there was nobody really wanting it to begin with. I disagree with you. I think it was a poor penalty. I think the contact was all right, but I think the height was ideal for the keeper, and I think overall he'll be disappointed with it. Not just because he didn't score, but because of where it went. And no, I think we'll see as the season progresses who the penalty taker is, assuming Celtic get that many. But no, I think if you had to ask me right now, I think Juranovic, based on the fact that he scored the one that he took.
Right, emphatically as well, away to Betis. We've got a comment from Jason Lee here saying that Giakoumakis looked like a better version of Ajeti. Is that the clearest view that Celtic fans have had of Giakoumakis so far yesterday when he came on? And he almost actually scored a screamer, didn't he, when he took it on his chest and acrobatically volleyed over the crossbar?
I think it is. I think it was 20 minutes or so. I think he showed. I wouldn't say he was a Yeti supercharged or anything like that, because I think his game's quite different to a Yeti's for me. But he looked as if he'd quite effective hold-up play. The chest control, albeit the overhead kick didn't come to much, but still the chest control showed a bit of composure in the box. It was also on display for link-up play later on when he kind of eased a bit of the pressure by taking it in on his chest and buying a foul, which not a lot of Celtic players do at the moment. So it was a different option. I thought he played his part well. I wouldn't necessarily read more into it than that. It was still a 20-minute cameo. But there's certainly positives there to take if he gets a bit more game time in the coming weeks.
You know what it's like for strikers, though. The sooner that he can get a goal, the better, no matter how he scores it. I mean, Kyogo got one quickly and has just hit a stride from there. I know he hasn't been good for Celtic in the long term, but Ajeti at the start of last season got one, and all of a sudden for the next 6 weeks he couldn't stop scoring. And I think that probably from a striker's point of view, the sooner that weight is lifted, the better. So these 20-25 minute cameos are all well and good to build up fitness for him and to get him integrated with the team on the actual park as well as the training field. As soon as he can get a goal for Celtic, then it's only going to be a good thing. So yeah, he was impressive last night when he came on, Giakoumakis, and it'll be interesting to see how Postecoglou prioritises him along with Kyogo, Jota, who is a nailed-on. He has to be a nailed-on starter now with the three of them, and then on the other side with Abada. And for the Celtic, have got options to interchange and mix and match up there. But yeah, Jota, as well as Kyogo from the last couple of months, Jota is now starting to really assert his influence and his authority on the starting 11.
I think so. I think I must admit, I want to. We're obviously talking about the forward play and the forward players, but I do think, and I said it in my match ratings, that Joe Hart deserved a wee shout out, because as much as he never had that much to do, I think it was like 3 times he was kind of called upon in crucial moments, and 3 times he came through. And I think that is why I gave him a 7 out of 10 rather than a run of the mill 6 for my match ratings, because I do think that is. I basically in my match ratings I said that on such moments does a Celtic keeper's reputation rest, and he showed why he's getting such a stellar reputation at Celtic, because that was essentially 3 times it was the match could have started swinging away from Celtic, or gave Ferencvaros an avenue to get back into it, and 3 times Joe Hart was there to kind of make sure that didn't happen, and I think it deserves a mention in that sense.
No, I think that's absolutely fair to bring up Joe Hart. There were a couple of scary moments in defence. There was one particular one when Starfelt played it was a lazy pass, really, I think, and then eventually they were thwarted in their attack. There was one moment as well, I'm just having a bit of a mind blank. Was that when Ralston made that last-ditch tackle? It
was. How can you forget?
There's after that moment from Starfelt. But look, I'm sure they'll be better in the long term. But Ralston had another good game at right back. Montgomery had a loose moment with his early free kick, but overall again won the penalty, and I think he was all right. The young fullback.
It started off the first touch of the game was a drive right through the middle of the Ferencvaros midfield. So that set a kind of tone. Although they still got behind Montgomery's side more than Ralston's, I would have said. he did link up with Jota well when he could, and obviously, as you say, Derek, it was his kind of burst into the box that won the penalty, so he done okay. Well, I'm sure we'll come to our predicted lineups in the next couple of days for the weekend. As to whether he keeps his place, I don't know. You had Scales at the end, but he also had Ball and goalie playing quite well against Motherwell last weekend. So it's interesting at left back at the moment, especially since the first choice still isn't even fit. And by the way, I thought you meant the Ralston block. You just forgot about the Ralston block. The Starfelt slack pass was when Joe Hart came out and collected it. It was just after the Celtic goal that Ralston slid in to save the day again for the second time in Europe. But no, that definitely deserves a mention. That was a phenomenally timed clearance, interception, tackle, whatever one it goes down as.
No, you're right. You're absolutely bang on there. I was just getting my incidents confused. And in midfield, Turnbull and Rogic, they're the preferred two in front of Callum McGregor. But I thought that Nir Bitton, when he came on, was fine and showed that there maybe is the option, if Ange Postecoglou ever wanted to move Callum McGregor further ahead from the start or play a double anchor role rather than just a single one. But the preferred two definitely seems to be Rogic and Turnbull. It has been for a wee while, and I'm sure that'll continue unless anything changes in the January window. But they did well again. Turnbull got his goal eventually. I'm not sure if it went in off him or not, but he was in the right place at the right time after missing the ball with his initial attempt to smother it home. But I thought that him and Rogic again played pretty well, linking up.
I thought in glimpses, Rogic especially in glimpses was creative. I thought Turnbull had plenty of running, but never really got going creatively for me. A couple of set pieces were okay. He obviously did. I mean, he did fluff his lines totally for that chance. It just so happened to go in when he he done well to scrap for it, but I think ultimately UEFA have taken it off him. He also missed another chance later on. I don't think either of the two of them played particularly well. I thought McGregor, even though he missed the penalty, was the best of the midfielders. You mentioned Nir Bitton. His first touch was kicking it out of the park, but after that, I did think he settled things and he was he kept things ticking over. And me and Alison touched on it yesterday. I don't think it's a negative necessarily substitution to put Nir Bitton on and move Callum McGregor forward and take one of Rogic and Turnbull off. I think Bitton out of the defensive midfielders that Celtic have is probably the one with the most progressive passing in a way. Because you're moving McGregor forward, you're not really making a negative substitution at all. And the fact that Celtic, obviously a lot of it was to do with Ferencvaros coming out more to try and get some from the game at this point. But the fact that Celtic created so much, well, it wasn't the starting three midfielders suggests that if he does opt for Nir Bitton, as we know, the style isn't going to change. It's still going to be attack, but it's going to be attack whether the game situation necessarily calls for it or not. And I think Bitton playing in that anchor role facilitates that more than like James McCarthy has shown so far that he could. Yeah,
all right then. Well, thanks for joining us again this morning. And remember, you can subscribe to the Celtic Way just now for £1 a month, and that will take you up to the end of the year pretty much. So guarantees you some top quality content, stuff like this, stuff like in-depth analysis, good interviews, straight into your email inbox every day. And also subscribe to us on YouTube. Tell your friends, tell your cousins, tell your pals that you go to the games with, and you'll get an alert every time that we go live with one of these or post any in-depth analysis videos and interview clips, etc. So thanks for joining us, Sean and I, and we'll be back again as usual tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Cheers, Andy.